So I'm really excited today to share with you all some of the partnered work that we're doing within the space of driving innovations within on-demand today, and to show you an end-to-end solution, which is really a new ecosystem for how brands can customize and deliver products efficiently. And with that, I'd love to introduce to you all of the partners that we're working with. First, a little bit about myself. So I'm Daina Burnes. I'm the CEO of Bold Metrics. We are a AI body scanning technology that can accurately capture a consumer's detailed body measurements that can be used as part of the process of driving on demand. And actually, on-demand is sort of near and dear to my heart. I come from a family of master tailors, so I've always been in the space of custom clothing and on-demand from that regard, and really was the inspiration behind starting the company of, how can we deliver great fit to customers? And I thought of it from starting with, great body measurements, detailed body measurements, as a master tailor would think about it. So to be part of the ecosystem of advancing how we're approaching on-demand today is quite a special topic for me. So I'm really excited to be here today and to be among my co-presenters today. So Colleen, from Carhartt, if you could please provide a background about you.
Thanks, Daina. Colleen Howe, social scientist, which is kind of an interesting background given the role I'm playing right now, but will be relevant to what we talk about today. 20 plus years in that field. The last six have been with Carhartt, 5 of those on the insights team, and within the last year moved over to head up global product innovation, and really excited to be here with everyone today.
And Matthew, tell us about yourself.
Great. Yes. Hello, everybody. And Daina, thank you for having us. Really appreciate it. It's a great honor to be part of the presentation and the discussion today. So I'm Matthew Wallace. I'm the CEO of DXM, and I've been in the apparel / CPG space for 30 years now. Not unlike Daina, it goes back to several generations of tailors, and actually establishing and having a presence of manufacturing here in the US for about 45 years. So a little near and dear to my heart, which also could be a situation where I'm too close to it, but trying to move away from it with this technology and this new platform. What's DXM? We're a technology-driven, sustainable platform that helps deliver on-demand manufacturing through really an ecosystem of best-in-class partners like Gerber and Carhartt and Bold Metrics and others that you'll hear about later. And we're really excited about the talk today, the chat today. So looking forward to that. I think over to you, Carson, right?
Great, thanks, Matt. Carson Newberry here, Chief Strategy and Digital Officer for Technology. Many of you might know Gerber. We're a 50-year-old industry innovator in apparel and fashion, amongst some of the other industries we serve. And we provide automation solutions for both product development and production. In my role, I've been driving our on-demand initiative, which is one of the reasons I'm here. I also, at Gerber, for several years, headed up our software business before joining Gerber 7 years ago. I spent about 20 years with Siemens, also in the industrial space and many other industries, and it's been very helpful and interesting for me to apply some of those lessons to apparel and fashion. Looking forward to the talk.
All right, well, let's get in it, shall we?
So I told you it would be relevant, my background, once we got into the deck. So again, background in consumer insights type of work for over 20 years. And so it's always near and dear to my heart to know that I work for a brand like Carhartt that's extremely consumer centric, as many brands are today. And so for 5 years leading that insights team, had a lot of opportunity to talk to our consumers almost on a daily basis. And what I would hear over and over were pain points they were having and things they were looking for, even if they couldn't always articulate it. And so we started to think about, how can we deliver on this? And so really always taking that approach of how are you solving a problem for your consumer? Carhartt is not fast fashion. We're very functional apparel. So we know that there are higher expectations for clothing, especially, with generations that are coming into the workforce now. They want to co-create. They want to do it from an aesthetic perspective, and probably most importantly for Carhartt, from a functional perspective as well. And even right now, our consumers, they have customized apparel in the past, and there really is a high desire. I think it's almost 70% of our research community wants to customize with Carhartt specifically. And when you really think about workwear, for me, it's an interesting category that can be different from other apparel spaces in that the clothing, we often hear that it's a tool. So that clothing they wear needs to facilitate their performance on the job. The right clothes can help them work faster, work more efficiently, keep them safer. But then at the same time, we also see that depending on the type of work they're doing, they can have different needs. You could be working with someone, trying to outfit someone in home services who has a very different need than a painter does, quite honestly. And so we started to think about, how can we create this experience that's more custom to the type of work the person's doing? From the consumer perspective, we've heard from them, they'd like to customize their fit. Again, there's some aesthetic reason to that, but there's also some functional reasons as well that a lot of times correlate with movement, the type of work they're doing on the job. Same with fabrics. If you're a welder, you need a different fabric than if you're, a roofer in Texas in the summer. So they're looking for that kind of opportunity to customize as well. And then probably most important and another near and dear to my heart is because they're using these clothes as a tool, pocket size and the placement that they're looking for can be very unique depending on the person and the job that they're doing.
Great, thanks, Colleen. So let's talk a little bit about what it actually means going from the current model of, frankly, mass production to agile and on-demand product creation and production. And we would like to also get some of your thoughts and questions for the Q&A around why you think it's hard and what are some of the barriers that you see that we can hopefully help you address and understand and overcome a little bit here today. So if you just look at it from an order perspective, as an industry, we've been focused on high volume orders at a really hopefully super efficient, low cost. And moving to on demand, you produce after you sell. So there's no big buildup of inventory. You make what you've sold. Minimum order quantities has been a challenge, especially for smaller brands. If you look at them and how to get MOQs. In on-demand, you're really down to even one MOQ, MOQ of one or few. And the lead times. Lead times take months. If you look at it from a consumer perspective, we as consumers expect product the same day or the next day, right? Well, that's not how it gets to the warehouses that it gets shipped from overnight. So, well, why is that? So on-demand turns that around and really moves the turnaround from months and weeks to hours or maybe days in some cases. And this really big, we'll talk more about this focus on lowest possible unit cost, right? And it's really more than just financials at this point. It's really a mindset. And we'll show later on here a little financial calculation that actually compares that. And the shift is from when you go on demand, you really start looking at the overall profit per unit as opposed to just the production cost. And if you add up returns, inventory, and all of that, you can actually come out ahead with on demand compared to low cost and high volume. And then going from, to make it real, going from a very fragmented supply chain that's not connected digitally to on-demand really requires you to connect all those pieces, to be digital, to make that speed happen and that efficiency. And that then gets you from lots of waste, making things that people don't buy, or if they buy them, often it's at a very high discount, or they return a lot of them, to get to something sustainable, not just from an ecological perspective, but also from a financial perspective, where you really only make what you sell. So we'd like to again invite you to shoot us some questions through Zoom here to discuss that a little bit more in the Q&A, why you think it's hard, and help you address some of that. But one of those things, as I was just indicating, is pulling together all the different pieces and digitally connecting them. So I want to hand it over to Matthew about DXM to talk exactly about how to go do that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Carson. And Colleen, yeah, look, I know you spoke a lot about that functional workwear and whatnot. You also have a huge following in the fashion space right now that just continues to seem to grow and with the Carhartt brand. So I think those younger generations that I seem to see wearing those beanies and those T-shirts and the fashionable brand also want to understand how to make sure they can personalize or customize or co-create their product too. And I happen to have 4 of them that reside in my household, so I'm well aware of their needs. Carson, interesting, you talk about that speed and costs and whatnot. I just wanted to share a stat. So Amazon spent $61 billion in freight last year. I think they didn't even do 140 billion in revenue. So the year before, now that you could say the pandemic, right? The year before they spent about 38 billion. The year before that, 27. So consumers wanting things when they want them and how fast they want them. You can't wait 6 months for something. You say, well, it's going to be on the shelf for August anyway, when the season rolls around, or the spring. Is the right thing going to be on the shelf? Is the right style? Is the right color? Is the right size? Is the right functionality going to be there? Is it going to fit me the way I want it to? And you wouldn't see these companies, trying to compete to get something to somebody the next day. And then I would say, here we are talking about 6 month and 9 month lead times. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Which is why, right, this workflow for on-demand that's in front of you, and why we spend a lot of time, thinking about how could this work? How could you effectively, right, get an order from somebody and process it and actually get it out of a facility, local facility, in 48 hours, so a consumer can get what they want, how they want it, when they want it. And it really starts with the customer, the consumer. It goes through a brand, or perhaps a social media site for an influencer or whatnot. It's something that's on social media, could be in a physical retail store. And the way our platform works is it goes really from the consumer straight through to the direct to consumer. What we recognize is this is not something we could even try and attempt to build, to do it alone, to try and configure it. There's great technologies in our research that were already out there, that were already connected to brands and businesses. You'll see a couple of names up there. You'll see Spectrum, who I think is also one of the sponsors of today's sessions, if I'm not mistaken. They're a great 3D configurator. They moved to 3D multiple years ago. And we said, look, we don't need to recreate a great 3D tool, a great configurator. What we need to do is figure out how to appropriately use the Spectrum tool and offer that within the whole DXM ecosystem. Because that's really what DXM is. It's an ecosystem, 20 plus organizations that have agreed to, for lack of better, come together and help each other, right? Some of which have stake in DXM, some of which don't. But we brought this together so we have a great 3D configurator, and that 3D configurator can actually take that incredible technology that Bold Metrics gets to provide on that virtual fit sizer that they have. And you answer your 5 simple questions around your age and your height and your waist and your shoe size and your bra size for a female or waist size for a male, put in some fit preference, and off we go. Through the brand or the store or social media site, you purchase your product. It's now customized, co-created, or personalized to the way you want it. You pay that brand, that store, that social media site for it, or that business. It goes into our DXM cloud middleware program. We collect and use anonymous data to learn only. And then we brought in another organization called 6 Atomic, who will then actually automatically create and generate a pattern. And then we get to move that along to a great partner like Gerber, who has an incredible innovation center set up in New York. And they can help process that through digital printing, through single ply cutting, through advanced sewing with smart sewing machines and whatnot. And we could ship that product out in on demand in less than 48 hours. In fact, we pushed something manually through 2 weeks ago today through the Gerber Innovation Center. And I believe it took us just under 8 minutes to cut and make a t-shirt from when we pushed the item through the platform, which again, it's only one item, pretty incredible. But I'd say if you could personalize, customize, co-create, get it there. And I think Carson's going to bring us through the comparison of cost shortly. So I'm teeing him up a little bit right here. If you could
Excellent.
do that in 8 minutes, yeah, if you could do that in 8 minutes, and yes, I know that doesn't include all raw materials and whatnot, and you have no markdown allowances or returns, how's that going to work, Carson? Why don't you share with us?
Yeah, I mean, you can just keep going on my slide here. It's, you said it. So what we did here, and just very briefly, is because the financials of this is often a question. On-demand sounds great, sustainable, all that is fast, great for the consumer, but we can't afford to do it. It doesn't compute, right? Well, that's not true. So we took this example here, a $40 retail shirt, which you can allow about 20 sewing minutes to. And again, that's the assumption we made. And we're happy to share some of this and assumptions behind it. But if you compare that to mass production in China, it's a low cost production, to made in New York, right, with a microfactory and the process that Matthew described. Your unit production cost, which everybody's been focused on, is going to be higher, at least 2x, if not more. You see that with the red bar here. But at the same time, off of your retail price, you lose a lot through discounts, returns, landfills, right, and scrap. So your bottom line profit, in this case here, is $16, and that doesn't consider marketing and sales costs, which we would assume would be the same on both scenarios. But if you look at on demand, you basically only make what you have sold very quickly. You don't carry huge inventories, especially not if you digitally print, because you do it on gray materials. And you won't have a whole lot of discounts and returns, certainly not. And it's when you make a product custom for the specific customer, as long as you produce a quality good, you're not going to discount it heavily. You're not going to get a ton of returns. So while your cost of goods with the local labor is going to be at least 2x, if not more, you're still going to come out ahead on the per unit profit of the garment. So this has now been validated with a ton of customers, and we're happy to go over it. But the bottom line is, this does compute economically, and it really comes down to whether you mass produce or do on demand, how good you can forecast demand. Now, if you're clear on the forecast of 1 million units, go make it as low cost as possible. If you want to test demand with what does your consumer want, go on demand, and then you can scale to mass production. So we can talk more about this, but just wanted to share some of the economics behind it.
So coming back to the brand perspective, I talked about what consumers were looking for. And Matthew, thank you. Yes, definitely there's an aesthetic aspect as well, which during our test, and I'm going to tell you about what we did with aprons, we went in thinking, a lot of the customization people would be looking for, that unit of one would be functional, but aesthetic was just as important even for a brand like Carhartt. In fact, almost everybody wanted to somehow personalize it with their name, or we let them pick different colored patches and et cetera. So, as we look as a brand to say, how do we meet these needs? How do we meet the needs of the consumer? And I will tell you, a few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, there was this idea like, okay, we need to make a pant for a painter and a carpenter and an air conditioning repair person. And but that doesn't make any sense. Suddenly you're proliferating SKUs, you're becoming over assorted, and you're not profitable. So when first met Matthew a few years ago now and started talking about this on-demand manufacturing unit of one, it really kind of brought together what we always saw as a consumer pain point, but also a business pain point. Like, how do we fulfill these consumer needs in a way that makes sense for the business, right? How can we support the needs of on-body storage that people are looking for? How can we personalize fit so that there's more comfort? We assume everybody's got these sort of general body shapes, but that's not always the case. And again, like I said, depending on the job they're doing, some people want to, even outside of the workforce, they want to customize, what the color is, put their name on it, et cetera, or some name that represents who they are. We also see an opportunity to really be more inclusive of different body shapes, sizes, and even abilities. So, as a woman, I can tell you there are some biological reasons that women are a little bit more difficult to fit than men. And we try to sort of like bucket everybody and say, oh, well, most are going to be like this. But in addition to that, there's fit preferences. And this was mentioned earlier, and how people prefer to wear things and that fit preference they want, that can change very quickly too. So if you've built all this inventory one way and then suddenly like the trend's going the other, what are you left holding? I also think there is an opportunity to use this on-demand manufacturing to help better serve the needs of people with different abilities. I can tell you, as someone who works with Carhartt consumers, these are, traditionally have been people who work with their hands and have physical jobs. And by the time they retire, arthritis can become an issue and other physical limitations. And so, how can we better serve that market without, creating a huge collection around that? And so you can see where on-demand manufacturing might have the opportunity to fulfill that need as well. And finally, we just really feel like this is a sustainable approach to satisfying different needs of many. So we don't have to think about a pant for a painter and, a welder, et cetera. We can have a base something and then, allow that opportunity to customize it in the way that that person sees fit and build it as they have spec'd it out and then deliver it to them.
So I think this one's for you, Matthew, to introduce us about the 3D
Yeah,
customization
it is.
platform.
And coincidentally, we had a Carhartt item that we brought up here. So, well, just kind of wanted to walk you through some of what Colleen had said and going back to a bit about what Carson had brought up. Again, what we envisioned in the conversation was, yeah, let's go do this ourselves. Let's go build a facility. We'll figure it all out. We'll figure out the technology. We'll figure out the advanced manufacturing. And what we found was, wow, that's going to take a lot. There's a lot of people who've done a lot of work over the years to try and perfect this. It's expensive. And when we get done with it, what's the ROI? Unlike what Carson showed you if you did that. So again, the approach was different. It was, create an ecosystem, right? Go into the bowling alley and take from each lane of the best and bring it together. And that's really what you see here. You're as an example, you're on an iPad here, you're on Carhartt's website. You have their short sleeve pocket polo, and you want to customize it or personalize it. You could do it by fit, or you can do it essentially as an additive. And through the power of the DXM platform with our partners, utilizing, again, the 3D configuration I mentioned, the great virtual fit sizer through Bold Metrics and the automatic pattern generation, a consumer can go on, order that, and we can get that to the Gerber Innovation Center in under 60 seconds. Yep. From consumer payment to Carhartt in under 60 seconds. And sure, it would have to wait in a queue if there's a queue there, but we believe that we'd be able to ship that product out in less than 2 days, 48 hours or less, and at a competitive rate, encompassing and looking at total cost of ownership, not necessarily at first cost, if you will, as Karsten brought you through it. So that's really a bit about kind of how the platform would work. Imagine that this was in the store, it's on your e-commerce site, it's on your phone. Actually, through the Bold Metrics platform, you could even create a personalized avatar, if you will, through the DXM platform using the Bold Metrics technology for yourself. So there's a lot to offer here, and the partners aren't just on this phone. There's additional ones that we're all working with collaboratively. And kudos to, I think, everybody who really, for the betterment of on-demand, the industry, sustainability, have come together, and some of who came together have actually been competitors. So with that, Dana, I think I'm handing it back to you. You can bring us through a bit more detail on Bold Metrics.
Thank you, Matthew. It's so incredible. I'm so excited about what we're building together through our partnered work. And I just really wanted our talk today to share some of that. And today I'm going to go through some slides on the body measurement capture, which is part of that ecosystem, super important to get accurate measurements in order to drive the custom pattern. So a little bit about our technology. So at Bold Metrics, we've developed what we call an AI body scan. And really, body measurements is our expertise. How the technology works is through asking really simple survey questions to an end consumer. These are things that you definitely do not need a measuring tape to answer. Usually with made-to-measure or custom clothing clients, we also can add in some additional questions to get at an idea of fit preference and body shape related qualitative questions. But primarily, it's a small amount of questions, 5 quantitative questions, or that can get at basic information from that consumer. And in the back end, we've, over the years, collected a lot of high fidelity body scan data of different geographical populations, men and women, and have developed a expertise in using AI to accurately predict the detailed body measurements of that consumer. So we predict over 50 body measurements. We've done a lot of analysis on the accuracy of these measurements, which I'll talk about a little bit in the next slide. And I just wanted to note, for this approach of a survey-based approach, it's all about reducing friction for the consumer. And that's the number one important thing. It's hard to get anyone to do anything these days. So how do we convert customers effectively? And so traditionally with custom clothiers coming online, they were expecting customers to measure themselves. There's issues with self-measurement in terms of accuracy, but also most people don't have a measuring tape. And then you require, sending a measuring tape in the mail. That's a high friction process. We also looked and considered into collecting photographs. This also introduces some friction into the process. Usually it requires some sort of tighter fitting clothes that need to happen. You have to then take photos and upload it. So this has proven to have some conversion challenges. As well as we wanted to take an approach that doesn't collect any PII on the consumer themselves. There's a lot of trust issue in market from consumer sentiment not wanting to pass personal information about themselves, whether that be a photograph or obviously their detailed information that would uniquely identify them. So our AI body scan technology eliminates all of those sort of like privacy issues that we've seen on the consumer side. So a little word about the accuracy of the technology. So we're a trusted AI body scanning partner that works within the ecosystem, such as working within an on-demand end-to-end platform, like we're talking about today. But we also partner with virtual fit tech companies that are looking to have accurate avatars generated in a low friction manner, also compatible with 3D design software companies, and of course, working directly with brands, retailers, and custom clothiers, whether it's ready to wear or for capturing body measurements. And so we've done a lot of studies on the accuracy of our body measurements. It's usually the first question that is asked. And so with these studies, we've had proven results of a very low percentage difference, absolute percentage difference between our body measurements that we produce, and if you were to compare that to a source of truth measure, such as a high fidelity body scanner. And certainly we've done quite a few studies also on the difference with hand measurements, also with self measurements. We do come in a lot more accurate than hand measurements or self measurements produce. So I'm going to go through three key case studies I think I'm really excited to share with you. So first, you have your custom clothier that wants to move online. That's been an area that we really get involved with quite heavily because we're a body measurement capture company. And Blue Delta is a company that has custom fit jeans for men and women, and they were an in-store shop and wanted to move their business online, particularly with COVID having more of an urgency around that. And so they tested our technology and found that they can capture, they just need 16 body measurements, capture it very with high level of accuracy. So in the case of theirs, results being even less than 5 millimeters of absolute percentage difference. And with that data, they can then fulfill their orders online now with complete confidence that they don't have to worry about at least the body measurement capture of that. And so that's been really exciting to see them transition their business model to an online model and really embrace some of the digital benefits of that. And then I also wanted to, I put FireDecks in this deck to speak a little bit about this because Colleen had mentioned fit appropriate for the job. So workwear related clothing. And we work with uniform companies. One company that we're really excited about is FireDecks, who has made to measure uniforms, which are actual firefighter uniforms that, are very important from a technical wear perspective. The resulting pattern needs to allow for a full range of motion. You're talking about safety fit, so the resulting garment needs to, they're going to walk into a fire with this garment on, so it's really important to get it right. And FireDecks wanted to move their operations digitally for their fitting of the firefighters. Previously, they had a sort of lengthy approach where you need to go to the fire stations and physically measure people, get them to try things on in person, and then determine what sort of augmentation to the pattern the made-to-measure pattern that they would need to take in order to drive that whole process. And so we've partnered with them in optimizing their sales operations nationwide, so they can get the right made to measure pattern determined and what augmentations to this fit on that pattern with a digital approach. So applying our questions into that process and being able to digitally capture body measurements seamlessly online. And this has really allowed for them to see appreciable made to measure size accuracy improvements as well. And then finally, I wanted to speak a little bit about, we talked about bringing things digital, bringing things online, having custom clothiers to be able to service customers online versus being relegated for the most part in store traditionally. But there's also a lot of benefit to having body measurement capture in store, particularly with COVID, to adopt safety measures for distancing protocols. Tailored Brands, we've been working with them for many years with their rental unit and tuxedos and suiting online, came to us with the need to remove the need for hand measurements in store and using measuring tapes in store, because literally some measurements that you take in store require you to physically hug the customer, such as like overarm, for example. So they needed to implement technology that could scale quickly, could scale nationwide, low barrier to entry, and get their customers quickly fitted in store, and then they can get them into the appropriate size. And so, we've had done this capability with them, that we're in over 650 stores nationwide. We've done over 80,000 body scans. We've done a deep accuracy analysis of that. Similar results to, actually kind of lower results than what the results I was just showing you accuracy wise. So it's been really exciting for them to have this capability, and also demonstrating the scalability of an approach like this in store or online. And then finally, you have the now detailed body measurements of your consumer when they go through that process. And this information is then passed into the DXM system automatically and seamlessly to the partner that works on the pattern engineering aspect of it. So ingesting these body measurements and knowing how to come up with the appropriate pattern based on the style of body measurement that's being provided. So I'll pass this part of the equation back to Matthew to speak through this a little bit.
Great, thanks, Daina, and again, congratulations on all of the great things that Boldmetrics is doing. Yeah, as I said before, and I want to step back for a second. We have about 2 or 3 minutes before we'll get into the Q&A side or just a chat of this. Look, I can't underestimate or overemphasize this ecosystem type model, right? The technology is really enabling things, but to have Carhartt and Gerber and Boldmetrics and Spectrum part of this, and Six Atomic, and like I said, there's others. Carson had mentioned a previous organization he worked for, Siemens, right, has been really helpful as part of the ecosystem, and even competitors to Gerber prior to things like Lectra and Genealogy. It's incredible when you bring together these organizations, how you actually can solve a problem for the consumer, for the brand, right? And really just not have to worry essentially about that first cost, but more that total cost of ownership, and get the consumer to the forefront, get that functionality, make it more sustainable, do right for the industry, do right for the world. And if it's enabled by technology, it really works. So again, just think about that within the DXM platform, bringing together this ecosystem, and everybody bringing to bear their great technology, their great know-how, their great knowledge around what they've been able to do. As Carson said, Gerber's been around a long time, and to be able to utilize their platform within the ecosystem, again, an incredible thing when you put it together. So essentially, what happens again is it's an automatic parametric pattern that gets draped and really graded and essentially ready for the cutting machine automatically based upon the technology of Boldmetrics. You get the 3D Spectrum experience that you saw on the Carhartt page, and the consumer gets what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. So it's pretty simple, but I would say it's been years in the making, so I don't think any of it's really that easy. But I would say for anybody out there, I think try it to learn. And that would be probably my biggest suggestion at this point is you don't know if you don't try it.
And Matthew, if I could just add from the brand perspective, don't try to do it on your own. I didn't really talk you guys through the pictures on my second slide, but it was us doing a very manual making of a couple hundred units of a custom apron. And those were pictures of the kits sitting on the ground. And we knew it wasn't sustainable to do it on our own, but we just did it to test, the desirability of the idea. And you will not make money if you just do it that way. Not going to happen.
Yeah,
Great segue for Karsten.
A great comment. Yeah, and I'll keep it short because I know we want to. Hopefully, we'll have some good discussion around this. But I mean, just kind of following through on the workflow is, once the consumer sizes have been captured by metrics, and the 3D has been visualized, the patterns have been prepared, then we take that into our customized pattern software, and we can create nests also of multiple orders. That's the other important thing. You might have an MOQ of one, but you might have 50 of those that you want to still optimally fit on a marker, right? To have the efficiency from a cutting perspective and raw material perspective. And then so our software combines all that, bundles it up, creates a digital print file. Assuming you want to digitally print on fabric, you don't have to do that. You could skip that step if you had fabric, but that gives you another customization, personalization dimension, plus a way to also minimize raw materials and be very sustainable. One of the partners there is that we work with is Kornit, and they've got some great technology. And then we take, vision technology, we detect the outlines of the prints, we cut to exactly that size on the fly, automatically adjust all that. So, we're trying to explain it at a simple high level. There's a lot of tech that works together. And I think the simple thing about it is you can just go call Matthew and he'll pull it all together for you, right? So, once it's cut and then we bring it over to sewing, there's some integration with the sewing there also to track the data throughout the process. And then it can be shipped to the consumer. And maybe the one just last thing I would say is that Colleen raised a really great point. You can go try this now. You can work with DXM, Gerber, Bold Metrics, and the other partners we mentioned to do sample runs, test runs, prototype. You do not have to build your own plant or a whole on-demand workflow around this. You can get started now, and that's what we're excited about. And what really the value of this partnership is with brands like Carhartt to pull it all together.
Well, thank you everybody for helping to walk the audience through this new ecosystem. I'm super excited about this. We have a lot of questions actually, so we will see how far we get. So I'm gonna ask questions, and then perhaps among us, whoever thinks they can take it, just speak up and we'll take it from there. So for first question, so when you produce on demand, how do you handle testing for fabric and finished garments? I was thinking maybe Colleen could potentially add some context around when you were making the aprons, how you tested around fabric and finished garments.
Honestly, the one that we tested initially was existing fabric platforms. So all that testing had been done. But there was an interesting thing that we learned while doing this, which is that it requires a different auditing process. Typically, you're auditing to a standard or a spec, and you're looking at the garment, you're auditing to, you're making 1 million of these, but you do actually have to think about your auditing process because you are now auditing to a very specific order, and you have to really just think differently about how you do that. But for our test, it was all existing fabrics and trims from that perspective.
Yeah, the only other thing I would maybe add to that is that I would think of testing in QA in upfront and ongoing during basically the creation of products. There's a lot of upfront that you can test and set up, and that gets you to really high level reliability quality, right? Because you should really take all the errors out up front as much as you can. And so then the during production, so to speak, QA testing is more like you would normally do it, in line and at the end of the line and some of that. But it's really in the process, and you do want to experiment with fabrics and materials up front once, right? And then build that QA into the process.
Okay, so another question. We have a lot of questions. I don't think we're going to get through all of them. So how involved does the customer want to get in the digital and 3D process? Do they want to design? Do they want to virtually try on the product? And how accurate does that need to be? So I'll take this one because I have a lot of thoughts on this. It's in the space of body measurements. So, for the approach that we take, and actually what we're setting up in partnership with DXM, is to be relatively agnostic as to if the client wants there to be a virtual try-on capability where they can then, produce their accurate avatar through our solution and then see the potential garment on their actual body. That's something that our systems can support. And it's something that is, I think, in the industry very much still being tested. There was some talk about this in some earlier panels around the challenges of the uncanny valley associated with realistic avatars versus more what you would want it to look like. And so those types of questions haven't really been completely fleshed out within consumer sentiment and what the consumer wants to see, but it's certainly something that should be tested. And I do see a future where perhaps it's always going to be like that. And we're not going to look at it on like a e-commerce model. We're going to see it more on something that represents our body. And so that's important. And then how involved they are in the process. For us, we've worked with a lot of different made-to-measure custom clothiers, as well as others that use body measurements directly for various initiatives. And again, we take the guidance by the brand. If they want to show all the body measurements listed out for the consumer to tweak, that's definitely something that we do and we have done with our clients. We also have some clients that choose to obfuscate that completely and not show the resulting body measurements. We've shown in some earlier studies that when you show measurements and they correct it, often they correct it to something that's worse. And so there's some potential risk associated with inherent errors that are going to be introduced into the system if you were to do that behavior, but it's certainly something that we are always willing to test and can support. Okay, moving on. So, so in third question. So in an on-demand manufacturing model, how are most brands handling fabric lead times? Are you committed to a Geiger order, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and then dyeing the fabric to an on-demand color? Or are the brands offering a standard set of colors for a customer to pick from and keeping an inventory of the fabric?
Yeah, I think it was great. Maybe
Yeah,
do you want to talk to that, Matthew? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, it was Gray's Goods, I believe that they were referring to. And I it's okay. And I do think it really depends on what product it is. It is very product specific. Gray's is a way to manage that. Within the actual platform, there are ways to use sustainable dyeing with one of the ecosystem partners. And it's actually, I think, 100% sustainable. There's no water emission at all. Of course, some of this Industry 4.0 technology comes with a capital expenditure for us, right? It's more expensive as far as the initial investment, but it certainly then does pay for itself in the end. So look, there is a grayish piece. It is very specific to the actual item itself. If you're just doing the additive, you could bring the product in from wherever you're manufacturing it, perhaps not, let's say locally. And we pull the inventory on a weekly basis using AI and ML, not just trying to throw out acronyms here, but really use the inventory levels. And when you're trying to predict on a weekly basis versus you're trying to predict on a 6-month or a year out basis, it's very different, right? Because each one that gets pulled, you can go replace, and perhaps you replace that from a local warehouse, and or you have an agreement with us that we hold X amount of inventory of finished goods per week for you if it's additive. So again, very different approach depending upon, are you doing fully customized, right? Are you actually making the garment from scratch, or are you doing additive, or can you actually hold grays and then dye? So I'd say there's 3 different ways in which you can come about that. Carson, maybe if you present.
Yeah, maybe just a couple of things. I'll keep it short because maybe we'll have a few more questions here we want to cover. But yeah, one of the reasons we work with Kornit is because they have a very sustainable, on-the-fly digital print, and it's extremely capable. Digital printing has come a long, long way, and so the beauty of that obviously is you really work with beige materials. It could be. And you can do denim, it's not just polys or blends and cotton-based, you've got a wide variety, pretty much anything that's not water, impermeable. But and then there are other technologies like that even expands to the thread. We're working now new cooperation with a company called Twine that actually prints the thread on demand to the spec of the fabric, right? So if you have a certain floral print, then adjust the thread on the fly. And if you think kind of the trade-offs of lead times and availability and on demand, that's definitely a very interesting thing to go to. And that's one of the things we've set up in the Innovation Center that we support through DXM is this on demand based on beige goods.
Great. Maybe we have time for one more question. Let's see if we can squeeze it in. So this is an interesting question because it gets at a little bit of, it's not always online, but also in store, there's really an interesting story there of how the in-store experience can be transformed with on-demand. And certainly we're seeing some interest there in terms of body measurement capture, as I talked about earlier. But there has been a lot of talk today about on-demand and customization in terms of a 10-day turnaround. How far off is a more instant turnaround in store as part of a retail experience where the consumer comes in, it's fitted, can customize, and return later that day to collect from in store? This has been done on a small scale as part of PR drives, but will this ever be a reality?
Go, Matthew, and I have a few thoughts on it too.
Go ahead, Carsten.
Well, so this, we actually have a few proof of concepts we're running right now. I mean, obviously working with Carhartt and DXM, but if you're ready, if you want to try out a capsule collection now to do exactly that, now maybe we'll do it in New York. Give Matthew a call or send him an email, and we can set it up. I mean, that's exactly what we worked on with this integrated workflow, is to be able to do same day or next day turnaround. And again, you're going to have to look at volume specifics, and you do have to pick a garment or a type of garment and set it up front. But yeah, that can be done today. Go ahead, Matthew. Yeah,
and I think if I could add to it, and I'll go a different slant. So again, bring one of our another one of the ecosystem partners. So Shimasheki, right? 3D whole 3D garment knitting, right? Whole garment knitting. 65 minutes. It actually can be done, and they actually have machines in stores right now. Now they're very loud, so they don't use them a lot anymore, from what I understand, where they had them. But yeah, that can be done. If you're trying to do a wash situation or embroidery situation, and it's not just a whole garment, that happens right now in stores with some of the denim companies that are out there. And then to Carsten's point before, if you want to try something and you're very pointed in what you want to try, we could probably look to try and solve it. But some categories are being done right now, depending upon where the technology is with it. So it is happening, but it's happening again, I'd say, in a more narrow space based upon the availability of that technology and the product that technology serves. And I think that's why we're trying to all come together here, where other industries have really moved forward in trying to solve these problems, right? Our industry is working to move away from where Daina's grandparents or great-grandparents started, if you will, into using technology to enable what that question asked. Okay,
I could keep going if they kick me out, though, but I guess we should probably wrap it up. We got through like half the questions, so that's pretty good, I think. And wish we had more time. I think this topic is so fascinating, and the work that we're all doing together and other companies as well in the space, and is just really interesting. And I'm excited for the future to really make this a possibility and something that scales and is efficient and all of the things that we spoke about today. So I just wanted to thank my co-presenters for joining me today in this discussion. I really appreciate your time in putting this deck together and to share all the exciting work we're doing with our audience.